Imagine a future where the most important decisions of our lives are made by artificial intelligence systems without considering their ethical and moral impact. What if these technologies are used to manipulate our emotions and control our decisions? Today, AI is at its crossroads. On the one hand, it offers a series of unprecedented opportunities to solve some of humanity's most pressing problems, from healthcare to environmental sustainability. On the other hand, it also possesses a series of ethical and moral challenges that must be addressed to avoid disastrous consequences. In this episode, we will explore the future of Latin America with AI, the ethical implications, how to address these challenges, and the hacker of today, it's an incredible Italian person that will tell us how his ideas are helping to shape a more human future for technology. Bienvenidos a Hackers del Talento, el podcast que busca cambiar el juego por lo humano. Creemos en una América Latina más competitiva, inclusiva, equitativa y próspera, donde las personas sean el centro del mundo laboral. Nos motiva el talento como el motor de cambio y por eso estamos aquí, para ser la fuente de inspiración, unión, colaboración, aprendizaje, debate y acción para la comunidad de people, de talento, de HR, a través de historias, reflexiones y conversaciones con CEOs, con líderes de talento humano, pensadores y actores de cambio. Te ofreceremos hacks para evolucionar como líder, como persona, sobre todo para potenciar tu empresa. Te invitamos a sumergirte en conversaciones profundas y significativas que te harán pensar, reflexionar y seguro te inspirarán a tomar acción. Únete a nosotros en este viaje para hackear el talento y juntos cambiemos el juego por lo humano, por un futuro más justo y próspero. The story of Paolo Benanti, the first Italian hacker in this podcast, is fascinating. You will be surprised by the twists and turns of his life. He's a renowned expert in artificial intelligence and robotics. Born in Italy in 1975, he's a well-known philosopher and theologian and has a prominent voice in the field of ethical AI. Throughout his career, he has explored the intersection between technology and morality and argued that technology is not neutral, but is inextricably linked to ethics. Well, this Italian hacker tells how he connected early on with the computing world.
Well, I was a son of an engineer and a professor, high school professor. And so actually I was in contact with the early models of computer when I grew up. I was born in 1973. And I remember this huge, bulky item in my home and was so amazing, this green phosphor display in which strange things appear. And probably it's connected to my parent, if I am so interested by electronics. When I was a child, I grew up like every normal Italian boys. A lot of soccer outside when you are not at school, but there was, it was the time in which Dungeons and Dragons, bicycle, the first portable radio device give to our childhood this sort of mythological environment, in which there are something to discover everywhere. In the summer, we spend from the morning up to the sunset exploring outside. And then slowly, computer enter in our lives, and especially the first textual adventure. I remember the Commodore and the first textual adventure, simple fascinate us. And we would like to understand how this magic can happen, And then growing up, we start to simple screw up everything on the computer and disassemble it, reassemble it. We was playing with the first PC, making them working with some kind of zombie machine, and then we start to coding. So we was the young generation that was having fun with all this digital environment. At the time, we don't define ourselves as hacker. We were simple curious.
The magic of telecommunication was experienced soon with an invention.
First of all, was a portable radio. So radio to radio communication. It was huge. It was long like a farm with a long antenna, and it was able to arrive at less than 1 kilometers. But for us was the magician of telecommunication, with us. And so we can communicate. We are playing to hide and seek with radio channel and things like that. And when we grow up, at one point we start to have a public radio or something like that, but it was too complicated because with a lot of regulation in Italy. So what we do was to set up later on a BBS, bulletin board system, and that probably was our digital version of the radio. But the desire of communication, the desire of sharing information and discovering other people was so high that we were so excited by the idea sometimes of being able to communicate with people outside of Italy or also outside of Europe. With portable radio, once we found a radio bridge that allow us to reach Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic. That was so unbelievable for us. Okay, today with a WhatsApp, you can go everywhere worldwide. With an email, the mail can make the turn of the world before you simple take back from clicking on send it. At that time was absolutely unbelievable.
A mother who's a teacher can be a great advantage for a child. She can provide a level of educational support and guidance that is not always possible to obtain from other parents. Now Paolo tells how life was in school.
That I cannot afford to have a bad grade in the school. Otherwise, my mother will kill me. And the worst things that some professor can tell her was, he is smart, but he can do much more than this. If some professor say something like that, my mother became a beast. Simple say, you didn't good enough, blah, blah, like every mother, And there is a joke. Do you know what is the difference between an Italian mother and a Rottweiler? That the Rottweiler is easiest to open the mouth once he bites it. So, can you imagine what does it mean?
You may wonder how a computer enthusiastic became a monk. Well, listen to this part.
Well, I grew up and I go to the high school. After the high school, I go for engineer. I was studying engineer because I would like to understand the world. But at one point, I was disappointed by engineer because it was simple giving to me a good scheme to approximate reality. I would like to understand reality. And so I will start to seek for something else. And this bring me to become a monk, a Franciscan monk. I switch my life and then I start to study. In Italy, we are used to say, if there is a guilty, it's a woman. So actually, I was with my girlfriend and she bring me to this retreat made by monastery, made by Franciscan. And at the end of retreats, I decided to stay and I left her. And so was something really, I don't know how to say, stereotypical. I don't know if it's stereotypical, but was something that probably has a typical story of the flesh illumination and bit stricken by something else. And in 1 year, actually, I left my former life and I joined the order. And then I spent 11 years in formation during the order, studying. And during this 11 years, I make philosophy, theology. I make a special program in ethics, and I make a PhD in ethics of technology because I would like to read back all my past experience and ethics of AI. And I won a prize as a grant to be a visiting researcher in Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And so I went as a monks, as a PhD students in Washington, D.C., studying ethics of technology and ethics of AI. So the adventure that I was dreaming when I was a child with my radio, with Palm Radio, continued up to nowadays.
St. Francis of Assisi was born in Italy in the 12th century. After a series of visions, he decided to dedicate himself to religious life. He founded the Franciscan order in 1209 with the approval of the Pope Innocent III, with the aim of living a life of humility and service to others. The Franciscan rule established that its members must live renouncing private property and material luxuries. They must also follow Jesus' example and dedicate themselves to helping the poor and the sick. The Franciscans became a very popular order during the Middle Ages and quickly spread throughout Europe. Well, going back to the story, how was the process of moving from engineering to philosophy to artificial intelligence?
Well, if I can say with a tweet, engineering was telling me how much is too much, and I was looking for why. And so I know it's much more complex than that. But, I was able to measure everything, but I still have not found why something has deserved to be made or not to be made. And this more philosophical and theological question is still inside me and still ping on me to look for answer in the different situation. I'm still studying and writing books and making research on ethics of AI, on the alignment problem between the machine and the human values. And still there is this difference or this tension between why and how much is too much. And both, I learned in the last years, they cannot be divided. There is no why without an how much is too much, and there is not an evaluable how much is too much without a why. So both elements has to be stitched together. And I learned that this is much more a journey than not an answer that you can achieve once forever.
San Francisco de Asís was deeply concerned about spiritual and philosophical issues, and it is known that he made several reflections on life, death, suffering, and the purpose of human existence. Some of the powerful, fascinating, and extremely complex questions he asked were: what is the meaning of life? What is true humility? Why does suffering exist? How can we truly be free? What is the role of creativity and beauty in the spiritual life? Well, following the story, Paolo is going to study in Washington.
Washington was really a nice experience, because it's a huge university. And I can go deep inside the cutting edge of technology. And at that time, there was a project that was called NBIC, Nano Bioinfocogno. That was the idea of using biotechnology in the biological existence of the human beings to change the information inside the body and to obtain a cognitive effect on the mind. And so I can go deep with the best classes in neuroscience and also cognitive science and computational neuroscience. And I saw the experiment. And there is a lab near my office in which one researcher simply put a PCB, a small electronic device, inside the beetle. And he was able to control an alive beetle, making him flight or not flight. So the idea that there is an informational layer in the human beings or in the living beings that you can touch, you can interact with, it's much more than a prosthetic, adding a wing or something else. And so the idea at the time, it was 2008, 2009.